Hello and welcome to Climb the Ladder. Today I'll be talking to Imran Khan. Imran is a tech investor who helped take Alibaba public in one of the biggest IPOs ever. He later joined Snapchat as the chief strategy officer, helping grow and take them public. Now he invests in startups with Proem Asset Management and works with the next generation of tech founders. Imran, it's great to have you today.
Thanks for having me, Castor. Good to see you.
Good to see you. So you've done a lot of things in your career, and I want to start just by talking about how you got started and everything. I think a younger audience with aspirations to have a career such as yourself would find it all very interesting. So, how did you necessarily get your start?
Yeah, so I grew up in Bangladesh and I came here for college, and I didn't know anything about finance or Wall Street. Wall Street is a concept. It's very a lot of the nowadays it's changed, but when I came 30 plus years ago, it was not a very common understanding in a lot of the smaller countries in the world, and probably still to date. And so I didn't know anything about Wall Street, and but one of my school friend got a job offer in Wall Street for summer internship. He was 2 years older than us, Chris Zook. And so I heard from Chris about his experience about working in Wall Street as a summer intern. He got a job at Societe Generale, SG Cowen, and that really got me interested. And then I started taking finance classes, and then I really got into it. And then I started, reaching out to all these investment banks in Wall Street, cold email, asking for a job. And that's how I landed a summer internship. And then after I graduated, I went to Wall Street as an analyst.
Wow, that's really cool. So, you went to University of Denver, right? So, Denver isn't necessarily like a target school for a lot of investment banks, Wall Street. So, coming from a school like that into people who maybe aren't at the target schools that these places are recruiting from, what is some advice that you could give to those people who want to get to Wall Street or want to get to a great job, or what is like kind of a path that you'd recommend taking or things you could do
Yeah,
to kind of elevate?
I think the easy like the it's really good question, and it was very challenging for me, for somebody who is, was not born in the country and as a foreign student and trying to get a job in Wall Street, not from a target school. What I did was I basically emailed the recruiting department of every banks that I could research and found, and I sent them my resume and trying to reach out. And most people, for my summer internship, I got a zero response back. Uh,
Mm.
and then the next step, what I did is I went to the Career Council office at the University of Denver, and that is in now we're talking about 1999 and 1990, yeah, beginning of 1999. And I had they had these uh, big black binders of all the people from University of Denver who lives in New York, because I realized that if I want to go to finance in Wall Street, I have to move to New York. So I was trying to find, okay, who are the people in New York? I have no families in the country. I was the first person from my family to come to the U.S. to study, so I really didn't know anyone. So what I did is, so I went to this really these notebooks and emailed all the alumni who live in New York, and basically saying that, hey, XYZ, I'm coming to New York City. I'm really interested in Wall Street. I'd love to come see you for a coffee or a few minutes. And some people responded, some people didn't. And it's really interesting. Through that response, I met this lady named Julie Sargent, and she went to University of Denver, and her daughter, I later found out, also was a couple of years younger than us at the University of Denver. And she wanted to meet with me. I met with her, and then it's really funny. And she was like, after the meeting, she was like, "Oh, who are you going to go meet next?" I was like, "Oh, I'm meeting somebody at ING Bearings." She was like, "Oh, I have a friend at ING Bearings. You should meet him." And so I went and I met ING Bearings. And the funny thing is that, well, I don't even know to date she really called that person or not. I when
Mm.
showed up, called the assistant, said I have a meeting with this gentleman, David McCullum. I still remember his name, and to date I have never met him. And I said, "Hey, David, I have an appointment with David," and I was like, "You are not on his calendar." I was like, "I think his friend called." So she said, "Okay, why don't you wait?" So I was waiting, and while I'm waiting, they said, "Okay, the recruiting department would like to meet with you." And so I went, and I went through the whole interview process. And post interview, I went down, and David was gone. So I never met David, but I got the interview, and then I got into summer internship. And after the summer internship, I got a full-time job. So there's a lot of, you know,
Mm.
interesting coincidence that ultimately I got a summer internship and that turned into a full-time job.
It's crazy how it all just kind of works out like that. I think kind of a theme that I've gotten from a lot of people kind of on their way up is just like cold calling, cold emailing, like not being afraid of rejection. And just like, cause I mean, you weren't even on the guys list, but things kind of work out when you really just put yourself out there and put yourself on the market. So that's pretty amazing story just altogether.
Yeah, I think never be afraid of rejections. Like, what's the worst can happen? People will say
Yeah.
no.
There are always more people to call.
But or try. It's not only about rejections on in terms of people meeting with you, but rejection of trying new things, right? If you look at my career, that's a common theme. I tried a lot of things, and because I have a lot of different interests, pursue a lot of different interests, and and sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail. And I think America is a great country. In many ways, we celebrate failure. In many countries, you fail and people completely shun you, like completely outcast you. And this is actually one of the greatest cultural strength of America, that we don't, we celebrate failure. Failure is fine. So as a person and as an American, you shouldn't be afraid of failing. And this is something I really admire about American culture.
Yeah, definitely. Well, failure is just the next step to success. So you need to fail if you're going to get there. Back to kind of what we were talking about earlier. So, how did you get from that interview? You made it, summer internship, and you got a job. How did you make it from there to becoming an equity research analyst at JP Morgan? Can you kind of tell me that story from? I know you were tracking internet stocks at a time when they were not what they are now. How did that path of being an internet analyst lead you to being able to lead the whole thing at JP Morgan?
Yeah, no, so that was also some coincidence. So, in 2000, I was, investment banking in telecom group. And in 2001 happened, telecom bubble burst.
Mm,
2000 happened, telecom bubble burst. All this investment banking was laying off people. And then the last thing people need, another telecom young banker, you know, the entire telecom industry, in the late 90s, telecom industry was raising a lot of money to do a lot of, kind of like what's happening in AI today. They were building this telco infrastructure. And so I was doing all this financing work, and we were pitching companies like MCI WorldCom, which ultimately went bankrupt. And so what happened was, as the uh, the dot com bubble burst, the telecom telecom also went down with it, and they just didn't need they lay off pretty much everybody in my class,
mm,
investment banking. And so I was out of job, and uh, I had to find a job quickly to go, to stay in the country, because, if you get laid off, and if you basically lose your H-1B status, which is a visa status. Uh, Fortunately, and that was not a great time to find job either. But unfortunately, one of the persons I worked with at ING, Mike Patricky, great gentleman who recently passed away. But what a wonderful and kind human being. He was the CEO of ING Americas, and he really liked me. And when he heard that, I was looking for a job, he said, "Hey, why don't you come work in my firm? We're a research firm with no banking, and would love to have young talent like you." So I went and took a job there, and it was a small farm, and there's like at the beginning there's like a 7 or 8 senior analysts and a bunch of junior analysts like me, and the sales and trading operation. And I went to my director of research a couple of months into, and my boss, and said, "Hey, I'm doing obviously my job, but I have a lot of bandwidth. Can I take on more?" And they're like, "Sure, if you have more time and you want to do more, we welcome you." So at that time, I picked up coverage of internet stocks at the bottom of the market, and I started recommending the stocks, and then the stocks recovered, and I looked like a genius. And yeah, and that really led the open up new door, and that's how I end up going to JP Morgan in 2004, because my calls were so successful, and my clients were really recommending all the big banks that, hey, there's this young guy you should hire to cover internet stocks, and that's how I end up going to JP Morgan.
that's awesome. Like so, very much a coincidence. So, what drew you towards internet stocks in the beginning? Was it just something else that was kind of interesting you? Did you see kind of the application? See, did you have like a idea that you thought they were going to blow up, or was it really all just by chance that that was that extra thing that you picked up?
No, I think I was interested about internet. I think one of the big things was I was young. right? In 2001, when I picked up internet coverage at the bottom of the market, I was 24 years old. And
Mm,
I was very young. I used internet a lot. It's kind of funny. I use internet a lot. At that time, not a lot of people, you know, were internet native, right?
mm,
And so I understood the business. I saw that all my generation was using Google in 2001, and Google was a private company. Most people didn't know Google at that time. And so, uh, and a lot of the portfolio managers at that time was in the mid 30s, so I think I had a deeper understanding about the space, and I saw the potential of what all my friends are using. And so I believed in it, right? And so I started doing research, and I saw the opportunity of these businesses. Yeah, so that's why I got really excited about these businesses.
mhm. Well, yeah, I mean, at that time, if a lot of the executives were a lot older, they didn't grow up on the internet. Like myself, I've been using the internet basically since I was a baby. Like it's been such a big part of my life, and kind of growing up, like it kind of hit when you were in college, right? That
Right.
was when.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So it really hit. I used to go to internet cafe when I was applying to university in the United States, and so I used internet to research
Mm,
school. And in Bangladesh, I was in 1990. I came to school in end of 96, in January 1, 97, actually, off season. But 1996, when I was researching schools, I basically went to internet cafe and finding US universities. So yeah, so I saw the power of internet, as I was graduating from high school. But a lot of the people who are my boss and there, they didn't grow up with internet. They didn't, or they didn't have that much familiarities with internet. And in many ways, I was the internet native, and it was pretty obvious. I looked at it at the time. Internet advertising was 1% of the overall advertising market. I never thought. Today, I think internet advertising is like 50% of the 60% of the advertising market. But I, you know, I didn't realize it'll be 60%. I was not that genius, but I thought, if it's 1%, maybe it'll be 5%. And if it's 1% goes to 5%, that's a 5x growth. And, companies like Yahoo look very interesting, and that's why I recommended Yahoo. Same thing with Amazon. I was like, oh, like it's so early. And I think, my age and my research, helped me identify that. And that's why I recommend those stocks.
definitely. So when you were at JP Morgan, what exactly was your role in the company?
Yeah.
You
So it
were.
started as a research, yeah. So JP Morgan hired me, in 2004. Uh, all the big banks, Google was gearing up for public, for after 2001, uh, between 2000 dot-com burst and 9/11, all those things, the entire capital market shut down. Uh, and 2004, all these internet companies started going public again, and people were gearing up for Google IPO, which is supposed to be the very big IPO, which was. All these banks, they fired their internet analyst in 2000, 2001, thinking internet is dead, and they needed an internet analyst. And JP Morgan didn't have an internet analyst, and they were looking for an internet analyst, and they were called all different Wall Street portfolio managers, and they started recommending me. You know, they're like, "Who is this guy?" And I was 27 years old, and I went to JP Morgan as a VP and run all their global, actually to run the US internet at first. And then by the time I left, I was a managing director. I ran JP Morgan Global Internet, US Entertainment Research, Equity Research. So that means all stock coverage of internet and media that was covered by my team.
So as an equity research analyst, how do you guys kind of work side by side with investment banking? Can you kind of explain kind of what an equity research analyst does and how they kind of fit into the whole scheme of
Yeah,
things?
so if you look at a big banks like Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs, they have different divisions, many divisions, but on a high level, they have three large divisions. You have a securities divisions, that comprise of uh, equities, fixed incomes, or all this stuff. So it's a group who trades those stocks. They're traders, sales and traders. So they're calling asset managers and others, and then they're trading. And then part of that other big group is people who are analyzing the securities that they're trading. So securities could be, again, equities, it could be fixed income. So I was covering stocks, which is equities, and I was covering internet and media. So as that role, you work with really three groups of people, right? One is your sales and trader who are selling your research and trading your stocks. Clients, that's their asset management, people who want to own the stocks. And and then the third group is the investment bankers. So investment bankers, there's a lot of law changed. So now all these big banks after 2001, the settlement with Elliott Spitzer's, they had to separate the banking and research. Before that, banking and research would work very close together, and research analysts would just pump them. A lot of times it completely disclosed their conflict while covering a stock. Now, when I was there, and I think even today, the research analyst has to go through the lawyers, and they call chaperone, what you can and cannot talk. But my job was like the bankers, they would identify a client to take a public or do some sort of transactions. And if they need a research coverage, they would come to us. And then I would talk to the company and give my opinion if I would cover the company or not. And so that's how we work with the investment bankers. So investment bankers' job, the corporate finance job is more of an advisory role. So think about the security division advise the asset management, corporate advisors or investment bankers advise companies or other businesses.
Yeah. So yeah, you were in the latter. So you were the equity research, and then you made the move to working in an industry role. So doing the other thing you were just talking about.
Thank you.
How did that transition go, and what kind of drew you to the other side?
So that was really interesting. I was kind of thinking about doing banking, but I wasn't sure. I got bored being a research analyst. By 2010, I've been doing it for 9+ years, and I
Mm,
wanted to do something different. And I was really talking to Joe Chai, who is one of the co-founders and chairman of Alibaba Group, and now owner of Brooklyn Nets. And I was talking to him, and I was telling him that I'm interested about pursuing other things, blah blah blah. And he was like, why don't you go to become a banker? You'll be pretty good at it. And I'm like, okay, whatever. A few days later, he called me. He said, hey, I talked to a couple of banks and they would like to talk to you. And then he made the introductions, and he was at that time CFO of a very large and co-founder of a very large company. So his people took his recommendation seriously. And I went as I talked to a couple of banks, and Credit Suisse, hired me as their internet running their internet banking.
yeah. So that kind of plays into something that you're very well known for, which is you're a big part of the Alibaba IPO. That kind of leads me into another question that I wanted to ask you about. So that was a relationship that you had that helped you later on in your career. So had a connection with Alibaba, which helped you lead them into that IPO, which was pretty legendary. A lot of people know about it. It's very one of the biggest. Was it probably
It
the
is still the
biggest?
biggest IPO in the US. Yeah, globally, it's
Mm,
the second biggest IPO after the Saudi Aramco IPO.
yeah. But how have kind of, because I know there are other times when you were working at Snapchat where kind of relationships with Alibaba and other people through China. I heard you talk about kind of how being able to travel to China because of your passport kind of helps you make some relationships there. But how has the network that you've made and how has maintaining relationships professionally really helped you in your career? And how can young people kind of learn from that and
Yeah,
use relationships like
so
that?
China, I was genuinely curious, right? Because they had a lot that have they have still have a very large number of people, and internet was very early in 2004, 2005, super early. So so we were seeing the internet penetration in the United States. And I was like, okay, and China was really making very large investment there, and said, if they get 20-30% of their size, this is going to be a very large market. You know,
Mhm.
so I was genuinely curious about it, and there's some interesting companies, and at that time in 2004, 2005, U.S. companies were also investing their internet companies. Ultimately, they got blocked by and restricted by the Chinese government, unfortunately. But it was potentially be a big market for a lot of the U.S. companies. So so I started going there, and that's how I met Joe. And over the years, we became friends, and he's very thoughtful, and I was very curious. So he genuinely liked me, and uh, and respected my opinions. So when I went to banking, Yahoo was a large shareholder of their company. Yahoo owned 40% of Alibaba, and and when he wanted to buy back that stake, he and I were talking, and he hired us. I was the banker along with my other colleagues at Credit Suisse. who advised them to buy back share from Yahoo. But at that time, he didn't have the money to buy back those shares, so we had to help raise him the money. So, I think we did a good job, and as a result, he hired us to take the public also.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty awesome. I mean, that's something that you will be known for a long time. I mean, that is a pretty big accomplishment.
Yeah, it was an interesting time. China has changed a lot suddenly since then, and obviously our relationship with China has deteriorated significantly. But that was a time that, there's a lot of exciting things that's happening in terms of internet development, and there's a lot of US investors' interest in China, which obviously has changed dramatically since then.
So I kind of want to transition a little bit towards your time at Snapchat, where you made the move from what you're doing before to becoming an executive. So I kind of wanted to ask you, how did your Wall Street background kind of help you as an executive working at Snapchat? We'll get into more details about Snapchat later, but just from the perspective of having that investment banking, equity research, Wall Street background, how did that help you become a great executive working on the corporate side?
Yeah, I don't know if the banking really helped you get, you know, great executive. I think what helped, couple of things it did help me. One of
Mhm.
my responsibilities ultimately became at Snapchat. I was not hired for that, but ultimately I was responsible for all revenue. So building the business from zero to 1.6 billion annualized revenue when I left. I think the big learning from Wall Street was, if you look at Wall Street, it's a big sales organization, right? Because you're advising clients, you are advising, you have a large sales organization, you have a large bankers group who are selling clients. So ultimately, you are selling, what the banks are selling is selling advice and products
Mm.
like securities to a large group of people. So, but you can call yourself fancy name, but at the end, you're whether you're an investment banker or equity sales trader or equity sales, you are in sales job. So the businesses had a very large sales organization. So I kind of had an understanding how large sales organization work. So that understanding was very helpful as I was building Snapchat sales organization, going from $0 to um, you know uh, and I think that in a many way that skill set, while I didn't know how to sell advertising per se, but I knew how to run a large sales organization. And I would say that Wall Street is a very good large sales organization, and that skill set I think helped us build the sales organization from very early on. So that was, I think, one of the big things. I think the second thing was, because what I did as a researcher and as a banker, I met so many different companies, before I went to Snapchat, and both China and both in the US. I knew a lot of the best practices. So I think we were able to replicate those best practices, you know, for Snapchat. And then the third was more the relationships that we existed already had, right? And that opened up some door, right? So that helped us raise capital, you know. I raised like $1.85 billion for Snap pre-IPO, and those relationships, the bank's relationship, was helped them. But then I also had to learn a lot of new things,
Mhm.
and it was really exciting to learn all these new things.
Well, yeah, you're definitely someone who is looking for a challenge. You like to take on new things, so that is probably was a pretty fun opportunity for you to really do something different that you were very interested in. So to kind of talk a little bit about Snapchat, as a teenager myself, Snapchat is literally my primary source of communication. I mean, I think I text my friends on Snapchat more than I use basically any other app. I think my screen time on it is a little bit too high, if
That's
I'm
fair.
being honest. But did you ever see it as becoming that important or that much of a cultural thing? Because it's almost like for teenagers, Snapchat is a culture among us. Like that's like you're sending snaps to people, you're texting people on it constantly. Did you ever see it evolving into what it became now? Was that kind of your vision for it?
Listen, I think the credit goes to Evan, the founder of Snap. Uh, but the reason I took the job at Snap, when Evan called me, you know, I I was not a Snapchat user. Like in 2014, how old was I? I was like 37, so I was definitely didn't do Snapchat. In 2014. Uh, but after I talked, like before I go talk to him, I downloaded the app and and Snap only had messaging and stories at that time. But I remember I went to all the first year analysts at Credit Suisse that sat on my floor. There was a one big section that all the first year analysts were sat, and I asked them, "Hey, do you guys use Snapchat?" And 100% of the first year and second year analysts raised their hand that they use Snapchat. And I'm like, okay, if everybody in the first year and second class for second year was using the product, and at that time there was no TikTok or anything, right? And that all I needed to know that, and then the question really is that, hey, how can you execute and make it a better product and things like that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you were a big revenue guy. You were, as you said, you were responsible for raising $1.8 billion. And then you took the company's revenue, basically, it was at
zero,
not profitable when
zero,
you first
yeah,
came to nearly a billion and by what your first couple,
yeah,
first, how many years?
4 years, yeah.
First 4 years. So how did you go about advertising it and bringing it to it? Because the way I understand it, Snapchat makes primary like the majority of its money through advertising. And so how did you do how like let me back this up. So I'm a big fan of the movie The Social Network. And so there's a conversation in the movie where Eduardo, Sean Parker, and Mark Zuckerberg are talking about when to profit or when to start making money off of the Facebook. And they don't want it to lose its cool. They don't want it to lose the novelty. Was there a conversation like that? And how did you approach advertising on Snapchat without making it look less cool or like kind of throwing it in people's faces?
No, and there was, and I think there's a lot of concern about how the advertising is going to work. And I think in the early days there are a lot of friction among quote unquote traditional ad salesperson. They were trying to make the ad as an YouTube kind of ad, right? I'll
Mm,
give you a perfect example. It will sound very obvious to you and to your audience is that when you look at an ad on your phone, it's you see a full screen ad, right?
mm,
Because all the videos on your phone are full screen, right? So if you go to let me go to Snapchat, so if you go to Snapchat, you see a full screen content and then if you see an ad, right now I'm seeing an ad, that's a full screen, right? And that's to you is obvious, right? But in 2015, believe it or not, there was no full screen video ad unit because we didn't have TikTok. Uh,
yeah.
Instagram was super early, you know, and Facebook ads were they're not horizontal ad, so they're not vertical ad. They're like a horizontal YouTube ad.
They're little banners, right? Kind of like
So when you're looking at in your phone, you had blank space at the top, blank space at the bottom, and there was this video which didn't fit into Snapchat because all the contents were shot with your camera. They're full screen, vertically cut, and then you see an ad that would be kind of like a YouTube ad, you know. And Evan said that's just a terrible consumer experience. We need to have a vertically cut ad, you know, that fits into your phone. So there's no this weird blank space. And when you're going from content to content, it doesn't feel weird. And
mm,
we got massive pushback from advertiser community because
mm,
advertisers didn't want to cut their YouTube kind of ad and trying to fit into the mobile phone. They wanted to take the desktop ad and put it into their mobile ad. And we were like, see, that doesn't not going to work. That's going to make our product look bad and make your ad look bad. But I remember I was in a big agency's office and they literally threw me out. They're like, you guys don't know what you're talking. You're a bunch of arrogant people. Our customers, our clients don't want to do that. Advertisers will not do that. But it was a big fight creating this full screen mobile video ad unit. And then ultimately Facebook adopted it, and then everyone, the industry adopted it. Now you don't see those, YouTube kind of ad in your mobile that were the blank screen at the top, blank screen at the bottom. And
mm.
so things like that we had to do. It was hard. We got a lot of pushback. But you got to stay course and you got to build a product that is right for users. And if the users like it and there's a right effectiveness, then the advertisers will follow.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like you guys have done a really good job, or just Snapchat does a great job of that in general. There's another feature with the filters when you have those different lenses on. I've seen they kind of sneak little advertisements into there. So I think Snapchat's been really good about that. You're scrolling through different filters to put on, and it's advertising it kind of right in front of your face without you even noticing. So I think that's pretty cool the way that Snapchat does it. It is very like revolutionary, and I think that's
That's great to hear.
yeah, no, that's awesome. So after Snapchat, you kind of moved back into the IB world. You
Yes.
work for Proem, or you founded
Yes.
Proem. Now you're the CEO, and you guys are very big into investing. You do a lot of tech companies.
Yeah. So we invest in all publicly traded technology companies.
Mm.
yeah, the stock that trades in a public market.
Yeah. So when you guys are looking at a company, I'm going to pose this question to kind of more the people that are not investing, people that are building their own company as young entrepreneurs. What can they do to make their product or their company stand out to people investing? Like what do you look for? What kind of company do you look for? Where do you see potential in small or up and coming startups, especially in the tech world?
Yeah, I think the big thing is you're building a business that I like businesses that you know, has, for the lack of better word, has some sort of monopoly in a niche market, right?
Mhm.
Uh, that I'm less, because if you have a company that there's that one category you dominate, you know,
Mhm.
at a minimum, you're going to be a very strong player in that category, and then over time you can potentially expand. But if you're in a player that's like there's a 50 other players and there's a lot of large players, it's kind of hard to differentiate. So what I'm looking for is companies that we think have some sort of moat, you know,
Mhm.
whether you can compete in a large market, and if you have a really defensible moat, obviously we're very, very interested about it. But what I'm really looking for, does this company has some sort of moat that helps them win against their competitors and go along.
So kind of they're creating a need and then they're filling the need.
Yes.
So I've actually read a book on something about this. It's called Play Bigger, and it talks about category design, where you make your own category and you put your company and you prime it to monopolize that. So that's kind of the way that you're investing and the way that you're looking at these companies. You want to find something that has a need. So you're building out kind of as you said, a mold for your company to come in and fill right from the beginning. So you kind of eliminate the other competition on the way. You're not fighting with other people. You're the one person that can solve this problem, and you're the one person that's going to solve this problem. So everyone should pick your company. Is the
Yes,
way I'm saying.
I like companies to a degree that way, thinking about it, right? Whether either they're expanding the market and bringing
Mm,
new dollar, or they're capturing a lot of new share, you know. Um, and I think so. Those businesses really interest me.
definitely. So to kind of wrap up, I have a question that I like to ask every one of my guests at the end. So, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self if you were starting all over again? What is the one piece of advice that you would give to your 18-year-old self about how to better your career? What would you kind of get what I'm
Yeah,
asking, but
I think the biggest advice I would go is invest uh, in your in many things, right? So to me, I think one of the thing that I didn't appreciate when I was young is the power of compounding. So if you compound something for 25% for every year, for a decade, it becomes 10x. If you do for 2 decades, it becomes 100x. 3 decades, it becomes 1,000. 4 decade, I don't even know how, try 10,000 times. So think about the power of compounding. So you're 18, and if you keep investing and get 25% return, or if you do 15%, it'll be 4x, 16, 64, so power of compounding. So to me is like invest. And when I talk about invest, it's not about invest in financially. Obviously, you should do that, but also invest in your relationship, invest in your health, invest in all of those things. And if you make incremental progress every year, it doesn't have to be huge. 2 decade, 3 decade, that investment that you made in relationship, that investment you made on friendship, that investment you made in your health, investment that made you make financially, will become very large, and you will be very successful. Listen, I think one of the biggest thing is that we always hear about these young people, but I fundamentally believe there's no shortcut in life. So, and sometimes it's better to have success over a long period of time, because that's more interesting and than having a one quick success and then you wonder how you're going to replicate the rest of your life. So to me, is like slow and steady wins the race. Life is a marathon. So invest in yourself, invest in your relationship, invest in your friendship, invest in your health, and invest financially. And
yeah,
feel
that's
good.
some great advice. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Right.
I'm
Thank you
sure
for
my
having me.
viewers have learned a lot from this. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. Thank you. I had a great time. So thank you guys for watching Imran Khan. This is a great time. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys later.